although Jim just walked off, but I think I got the thumbs up. So good evening and welcome to this Tuesday, March 16th, 2021 meeting of the Raymore Planning and Zoning Commission. Would you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you. And since we are all back together tonight, I will be doing roll call. Commissioner Bowie is absent. Commissioner Ingert?
Here.
Commissioner Faulkner?
Here.
Vice Chair Fizer?
Present.
Commissioner Manser?
Present.
Commissioner Peterman, your title, I'm sorry, totally. Secretary Peterman, I apologize.
Here.
Commissioner Kia, I don't see. Mayor Turnbow.
Present.
And Chairman Wiggins is present. Thank you. All right, no personal appearances tonight, so we will jump right into the consent agenda. And I would entertain a motion to dispose of or discuss the approval of minutes from the February 16, 2021 meeting.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I move we accept minutes from the February 16th, 2021 meeting.
All right, having a motion from Commissioner Faulkner, second by Secretary Peterman to approve the minutes from the February 16th, 2021 meeting. All those in favor? Oh, very good. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 in favor. Seeing nobody else, there's no opposed, no abstentions, 7-0. Moving right along. No unfinished business tonight, so we will jump into new business. And we will begin with our presentation on the proposed local use tax, which would go to Assistant City Manager Iki.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate the chair and as well as the entire Planning and Zoning Commission giving me the time and opportunity to talk a little bit about the use tax, the proposed use tax that is going to be on the April 6th ballot. One of the things that we have discovered, or as we're learning as we've been talking about what a use tax is versus a sales tax, how this will affect the city and also our current local businesses, one of the things we realize there's still a lot of confusion out there as to what exactly a use tax is and how it applies to purchases that someone makes online. And so just kind of give you a little bit of history. Initially, technology has essentially changed everything, and I think we can agree that online shopping has absolutely changed, not even just in light of the COVID pandemic, as everyone was shopping online or trying to avoid some of the brick and mortar stores. But even before that, we know that the state of Missouri year over year saw double-digit increases in online sales alone as they were able to kind of collect their use tax over the past 10 years. They have seen an increase, and even with the pandemic in this past year, they saw nearly a 30% increase in online sales. Now that we are a full year since the declaration of the pandemic, and I think folks have gotten into a pretty good habit of shopping online, I suspect that it is not going away, and we are going to see more and more opportunities for online retail. And so this really is a good opportunity. On the other side of that coin, we also had hoped that the Missouri legislature was going to step up and help us out in this regard. Really what kind of lit the fuse on why the use tax is important and why it's before voters now. Back in about 2017, I believe, Wayfair, which is a major online retailer that competes with Amazon and several others, it had taken a case to the Supreme Court that essentially the Supreme Court ruled that if a retailer like Wayfair did not have a physical brick and mortar distribution center or a retail shop in the state, then that state would not be allowed, or that locality, that municipality would not be allowed to collect a sales tax on those items that are sold to residents within the jurisdiction. Currently, the city does have a use tax. If you remember, if you purchase a car outside, anywhere, outside the state, there is a use tax where you pay the sales tax, and that is remitted back to the city. And we had kind of hoped that the legislature would step in and say, with cities, having that use tax already on the books, that was going to be okay for us to use the exact same, essentially equalize the sales tax from what we currently have to allowing to apply that to the use tax for just online sales. Unfortunately, that did not happen, and the legislature has put us in a position that we need to kind of explain the difference between the use tax, the sales tax, and why it is so important to equalize the two. So currently, if you were to purchase something online, say you were to go to Amazon, Amazon does not have a physical presence here in the state of Missouri. They do not have retail shops. They act solely as a distribution center or kind of a logistics center for goods that you purchase online. In that, currently you pay a 4.2% use tax to the state, a 1.6% use tax to the county. But if you were to purchase that exact same item, and I think the literature that I have kind of sitting in front of you, it talks about if you were to buy a lamp online on Amazon versus if you were to buy that exact same lamp at Walmart here in the store or in the city, you would then be subject to that 2.5% sales tax in the store that you are not subject to through the use tax. And this does a couple of things where it kind of creates an unfair playing field for those local businesses that have already committed to opening a shop here within the city of Raymore that have become part of this community. And so our hope is that as residents are kind of weighing the option of supporting or not supporting the item on the April 6th ballot, they'll understand that this really is not just something that the city is proposing that there would be a benefit from, but that there is a benefit to the local businesses as well, as we're able to equalize the playing field. At the same time, even though some of these businesses aren't located within the city of Raymore, they do still use city resources. Amazon still drives the exact same roads that need potholes filled. They still take advantage of the amenities that are within the community. And if a package gets stolen off your front porch, you're still calling the police department in order to report that crime and have them investigated. And so, again, even though these services aren't located here, these retailers, they do still use our services. And so that is why, as part of the approval, or if residents approve the use tax on April 6th, we're looking at 3 areas that will really benefit within the city. And we wanted to ensure that this wasn't just a proposal and a approval of a use tax that would, simply go into the general fund. We wanted to ensure that there was a plan and that we had a plan that we could present to residents that also would be on the back end of this use tax. So back in 2020, we contracted with a group to look at our service levels as well as our staffing levels within the city of Raymore. They were able to really take a deep dive into 3 major areas where we kind of consider those the boots on the ground. These are the staff members who interact daily with our residents in our police department, our public works department, and our parks and recreation department. Not the folks that like me that kind of get to sit in an office and work, but they truly are getting the work done for our residents every single day. And what we realized when we began to compare ourselves to not just like cities here in Cass County, but cities across the region as well as across the nation, our staffing levels are a little bit lower than what our peer cities are. And so our hope is we're able to use the use tax, or the proceeds generated from this use tax, which we estimate based on state collections. We estimate that in the first year we'd be able to collect just under $1 million in use taxes based on online sales that we're missing out on currently. So with that, when we have in hand the report from our HR consultant in our group, they initially told us that out of our 3 major service areas, there were a couple of things that we needed to do. And the first one was, based on current service levels and based on the growth of our city and future growth of our city, we needed to hire 20 new police officers in the next 5 years. In the Public Works Department, we needed to hire 13 new Public Works maintenance workers, and in the Parks and Recreation Department, we needed to hire 7 new maintenance workers, just to keep up with those service levels and to keep up with the growth that we see coming down the pipeline for our community. One of the things that we also enjoy, and we were able to just talk to the city council about it last night, is when you look at the level of satisfaction that our residents have when it comes to the services from those 3 areas, far and away, those 3 areas continue to enjoy an incredibly high satisfaction level. Our police department enjoys a 92% satisfaction level from residents. Our parks department enjoys a 70% satisfaction level, and the Public Works Department enjoys an 82% satisfaction level. And each of those areas, again, we far and away surpass our regional peers as well as across the nation's cities of like size. And so we know our residents enjoy the services. They see that there is a great value in the services that are provided by those three departments. And so our hope is, as we move forward, that as we look to expand those departments, we can, one, keep up with the services that our residents have come to expect, but also keep up with the growth that we're going to be experiencing within this community very shortly here. And I know everyone here on P&Z absolutely understands kind of that growth that's coming our way. But we also recognize that getting to those high numbers that were recommended is not possible in the first year. So as part of our informational campaign and some of the flyers that you have in front of you today, our recommendation come November 1, if this were to be approved by voters, is that we'd be able to hire 5 new police officers in this first year of the approval of the use tax. That'd be a new police officer for all 4 of the shifts, and then 1 new detective in the detective unit. In the Public Works Department, we'd be able to hire 5 new Public Works maintenance workers, so that would be in an entirely new crew that could either work directly with customer service issues and could respond just almost immediately to those potholes and other issues that residents call in on a regular basis. And then the Parks and Recreation Department, or kind of do things a little bit differently. We're looking at hiring 3 new maintenance workers to keep up with the maintenance issues and some of the maintenance that's needed in those areas. And then we'd also hire 1 new recreation coordinator, and this person would be solely focused on the facilities, someone who could help facilitate the renting and the usage of Centerview, the RAC, and the shelters in the area. The idea being that these are areas that generate revenue when they're rented, and we need someone who can focus on the maintenance and as well as the customer service in those areas. And so that would be the plan from the city in year 1 if approved. As I said, as we were talking a little bit earlier, or as I mentioned a little bit earlier, and what I want to leave the Planning and Zoning Commission with is this is something that is not just I guess a necessity simply because it would generate, we'd be able to collect the equivalent of the sales tax for those online purchases. We know this is necessary because there are businesses here in town that currently, they pay the sales tax. They're good community members. They're leaders within the city, and we want to be able to level that playing field and create a good environment for businesses, not only here but also those that are doing business online with our residents, and so that we can enjoy the same levels of service in both areas. I know I've thrown a lot of information at you. I have handed out flyers to everyone if you've not already received this at home. This mailer already went out just at the beginning of the month. On Wednesday, March 24th at 6:30, we're going to have staff and the department heads at Centerview from 6:30 to 8 o'clock holding a kind of a town hall, an open house. So if anybody has any other questions or they have information that they'd like to ask directly from those department heads and our chief of police, we'll be available at that time, and we'll have that time that we can kind of discuss a little more in depth about what the use tax will be. But as I'd mentioned earlier, when we were looking at our citizen satisfaction survey, one of the things we really need to dig into is kind of the level of education, to let folks know what the use tax is, what the sales tax is, how those are different, but how we're trying to make them kind of one and the same. And so our hope is that by speaking to groups like you all tonight, as well as kind of speaking with the council and speaking with other community groups, we can share that information and we can make that education possible with everyone. And so as you're out talking with other folks in the community, as kind of they ask you questions, hopefully you'll also be armed with some of the same information that I was able to share with you tonight. So absolutely happy to answer any questions you might have about the use tax or what its proposed use will be.
Mr. Chair, I don't have a question, but I would like to add something.
Please go ahead.
So it's been probably, 6 or 7 years ago that the Missouri legislature had debated the wayfare tax, as Mr. Ike explained, and whether to make it statewide or not. As a compromise, the legislature allowed for individual municipalities to place that item on a ballot to sort it out. In the beginning, when some of the cities saw it as the balance of sales tax began to diminish because brick and mortars were being used less and less and online sales were occurring, many cities saw a decrease in general revenue and began to try to pass the use tax as a fill-in to the general revenue budget of the city. A lot of taxpayers did not see that as an advantage, naturally, and because the state would not make it statewide, it then became incumbent upon us as a municipality to press forward with the issue at such a time that we thought it might be received well. So what we have seen over the past couple of years is a lot of failures on some municipalities' parts who just put it out there, and we're going to place this money in the general fund, not designated for anything. Where the successes come is where these municipalities like Independence and Lee Summit, who have said, this is what the money will be used for. This is only what the money can be used for. This is why we did the staff study, because we knew we were shorthanded. We had not had any additional personnel put on the payroll since what, 09?
2007 was the last.
Was it 7? So we've been working right at the 100 FTE level throughout the city since then. And so we saw this as an opportunity because we saw sales, all those sales were holding well within the city. The community continues to grow. And so our sales tax level while it's gone up a little bit, it's not gone up in relation to the growth of the city. And so we saw this as an opportunity to say, okay, folks, this is what we're going to use that 2.5% for. That will raise about $1 million a year. We're going to use it for additional personnel, people that we need to continue to provide the services and maybe even improve upon those services, even though they're doing pretty good right now. But maybe we can do better. And so we feel like that we've proposed a pretty good explanation of what the use tax will be used for, that it's totally dedicated toward that purpose. And we're really hoping that the folks can get behind it here in the community. If you've noticed, if you've made some online sales lately of retail items, there is a tax associated with it. The state has already put their finger on it. The county has a tax that they are collecting, and the city is not. So it's a reduced tax level. You're still being taxed on your purchases, but it's at a reduced level. And in some way out of state ones that have no footprint here in our city, you're not getting taxed at all. Even the state, I don't think, gets anything out of that. Because I've seen some, and of course it's the state would have to actually go after them and audit them, and nobody's going to go to Seattle, Washington to try to collect on an individual purchase. So anyway, so that's kind of where we're at right now. It is a 2.5% increase on sales tax for online purchases that's dedicated toward the city, but it can, as the brochure says in the fourth paragraph there, it kind of levels the playing field with our brick and mortars that continue to struggle locally and sometimes get yelled at because of their sales tax rate. Well, just go buy it online. Well, you're really only saving about 2.5%. Really, so it's not that big of a struggle, but it can mean so much to the services of this city. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Reiki? Yes, Commissioner Ingert.
I understand the law enforcement, the parks, those kind of things. Those numbers aren't going to change. They're going to remain the same from today, 20 years on down the road. Is there a plan B should this not pass?
At this time, right now, our focus is on the use tax passing, and if this were possible, we'll figure that out if that were to happen, and we have, several months through the summer to kind of look at the budget and make any adjustments we might need.
If I could kind of add on to that. So, Tom, what we have seen is a tremendous dedication toward the infrastructure of the city on an annual basis. I think even in the capital plan that you've seen presented here on an annual basis by the city to the P&Z shows you that we have we want to continue that level of infrastructure input. And if we don't get something like this, what we will be looking at is what other areas we can cut as those services are required by personnel. So there may be, instead of $1 million into the account for curb replacement and asphalt, it may be $750,000 to bring 4 more police officers on, or it may be $500,000 that we dedicate to that. While we're still fixing things, we're not fixing them at the rate that we continue to fix them at. And we've seen that struggle occur in other communities who have not gone after a way to continue to improve upon personnel advancements and those types of capital improvement items.
Would there be a way to get that information out to the voters so that they would understand the importance behind this
Sure,
proposal?
sure.
If this doesn't pass, this is what we're up against.
Right.
Okay, that's just my question.
No, I don't know that we've made that argument, as we've made the argument to ourselves. I don't know that we've included that in our brochure here. We hate to threaten you with less services if this doesn't happen. Realistically, we're looking at, okay, we're going to just have to refigure the checkbook, and see where the money can come from to go to another, rob Peter to pay Paul, that type of thing. Right now, we enjoy a pretty good level of infrastructure replacement and infrastructure care, and we'd like to keep it at that level because that's one of the reasons why we get an awful lot of good things said about our Public Works Department, is that they do a great job of maintaining the roads and the curbs and the sidewalks and things like that, so that we can enjoy a beautiful community that we have. We just don't want to see it degrade.
Question? Okay.
Commissioner Bowie.
Just a couple things, thank you. Kind of on that same vein, I just got two quick point, or 1 point, 1 question. When you said, when you were giving the presentation, you said we have such high satisfaction levels in those 3 areas. The first thing that came to my mind is, okay, so why do we need to do it if we have such high levels of satisfaction already? Just something for you to think about the next time you present, because that's going to trigger people to think, oh, well, it's great already. Why do we need more? So it's just something to think about. Second question, or the second thing, the one question is, what is the projected growth that you talked about that would spur the need for this? If you could just speak to that.
Sure. So to kind of address your first point, and I think this really helps folks understand is that just because we, even though we have, it's almost kind of an in spite of situation where we have a really high level of satisfaction when it comes to our police department, public works, and parks department, and we recognize, as an assistant city manager, I recognize that over the years that I've been here, we have been asking them to do less with more, or do more with less. There is certainly a need, and I think you may even see the second half of the presentation tonight, some of the projects that are simply getting ready to be completed, whether they're an apartment project or whether it's a light industrial project. I mean, and even single-family homes are still going strong. That is the kind of growth that we're looking at, and we're seeing kind of in still, though, the planning phases. We recognize that in the next few years, there is going to be a level of growth that is going to outpace the staff that we have. And so the hope is that while we enjoy a high level of satisfaction, how do we maintain that if we continue to grow as a city, and how do we ensure that that level of satisfaction continues, if not going up? Then how do we maintain that if we're, as a community, our population continues to grow by several thousand over the next several years? It's something that our hope is we're able to get ahead of that curve, a downward curve that may happen in that level of satisfaction. And we want to make sure that we have the resources in place, that we are collecting and equalizing that playing field when it comes to the use and the sales tax ahead of time, so that we're not coming to residents when satisfaction levels are low, when we are in a situation where we are having to unfortunately make those kind of service cuts already. And so with those things ahead of us rather than behind us, I think this is an ideal time for us to look at having this in front of voters, because we are able to confidently say, these are the three departments that we know affect some of the most change in the community. We want to ensure that you remain satisfied with the levels of service that you have, and at the same time show the growth that this community is able to kind of see through and have those continue on a parallel track rather than have the growth outpace what we're able to do right now.
Question. What about the second part of the question? What are those numbers in terms of growth? Do you have any idea?
So in working through the strategic plan, in working through the strategic plan, we have projected growth at about 1.8%. Yes, it's a little bit conservative, but given the up and down trend over the last 10 years, that seemed like.
Any additional questions from the commission? Very good. Thank you, Mr. Iki.
Excellent, thank you.
And with that, we will move on to the previously mentioned completed projects. So new business item B, review of completed projects. I see the projector is up and on, so I will turn it over to city staff for their presentation.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and take over your screens just so that we're all looking at the same thing. It's basically what is in front of you, your packets, but we'll just go over it so that people that are watching can also see what you're looking at as well. So since 2009, when the Unified Development Code went into effect, there have been 33 different amendments to the code. In 2018, staff initiated a periodic review of different projects that have gone on to ensure that it is meeting the requirements and sort of the intent of the code. So this is one such review, and I just ask that you consider any items and how they've changed, if they've changed, if you would like to see changes, how that would improve the final product, but also maintain an understanding of developer costs and other potential hurdles to development. So just kind of both lenses of development associated with cost, and then also how we want our city to look as well. So the first project is the Raymore Activity Center, the RAC. It was approved on November 15th, 2016. So the first one is a site plan showing what came before council or commission to be approved, and then second is an aerial view of what was then developed. Again, this is showing the aerial of what was approved versus what is there today. I would also say that these were taken recently, so it's not really the season for growth on bushes and trees. So just keep that in mind. It might look a little bit different here in the coming weeks as things start to bloom. And then this is another view. Also, the trees here in the back of the RAC were not planted because as part of the GO bond, that project is going to be expanded. So they weren't planted to save money and in the hopes of future expansion. So based on that, my question would be, what aspects of the design do you guys like or do you dislike? And then one thing that in talking with the Parks Department about, and in looking on how the Parks Department in general will expand, is having some kind of element of continuity between the buildings, something that you guys would like to see. So some of that might be the tonal colors, the vertical or wood elements that are on the outside, but it's also on the inside when you walk in, and it's also at center view. So just, and then also in the back, I don't have it on this picture, but in the back of center view, how they have the trees and then the rocks on top, just different elements like that, if you guys would like to see that carried throughout other aspects of the parks buildings in the future.
I think Commissioner Faulkner is raising his hand. And
Yeah.
since
Yes.
it's a pretty informal debate, I would say just if you have questions, please go ahead and speak up
Okay.
when somebody is done.
I was going to ask, and since Ms. Jordo stopped at the end, I figured this was a good time to address each construction project as we go.
Yes, sir.
So I have to admit, I've not been inside the rack, but I've certainly spent a lot of time in the last year walking trails, Hawk Ridge, Centerview, and I guess I'll call it Memorial Park there by Raymore Elementary. And one of the things that caught my eye immediately about the approved site plan versus the aerial, we've noticed in a few places walking the trail generally around the outside perimeter of the park that there's a few places where sidewalks don't exist. And one of them in particular, we've cut across the grass from the east-west trail north of the rack down to the rack, and I noticed on the approved site plan, hey, there looks like there was supposed to be a sidewalk there. So I like the site plan, and I do wish that there were another sidewalk there. I know that there's work currently going on right in that area, particularly just south of the rack, but the other sidewalk that does not exist when you're walking along Madison north-south, and when you come to the access drive that comes in, shown here just south of the rack, there's not a sidewalk continuing all along, so you either walk in the grass or you walk in the street. And I think I'll note that, just when we're looking at site plans, pedestrian walkability is a big deal in Raymore. I think we've generally been very successful, but it's still something that I think deserves our attention. On the positive side, you mentioned it, and I think it was a very smart move in anticipation of expanding the rack, not to waste the money on trees that would have to be torn out. So that certainly was a smart move on somebody's part.
I have a comment. You mentioned things that we liked about it, and I really like the sort of random metal panel pattern that's on the building. But I really like the wood elements as you enter the space, and how they have them at Centerview too. I think it kind of brings a warmth to what could be kind of a cold utilitarian building, and I think I really like seeing that throughout the city. I think it's a great design element, and every time I see it, I'm like, wow, we're doing this in Raymore. It's kind of cool. So I just really like that aspect of it. I think like Centerview, I love that too. I love the outside patio, and so I'm like all for it. More wood elements. The vertical, the horizontal slats. I just love that look. So that's my opinion.
Not question, but quick thing about it. I like it. Looks good on the outside. I have no issues with it. It feels like we're waiting on another phase or something. When I see it, it kind of looks like, okay, there's a big open field out there. What's coming next? Other than that, it looks good. Maybe a little bit more beautification in the front, flowers, trees, things going up to it. But other than that, it looks good, and I like it. I think it fits in well with some of the other buildings we're going to talk about later.
Thank you so much, everyone, for your comments. For the next one, we have Brightside Children's Center. They did a partial expansion that was approved back in May of 2018. So they initially had this site plan approved, which included 2 buildings, and it's one parking lot. They're adjoined, but it kind of appears to be 2. So far, what they've done is 1 building and then the parking lot directly in front of it. As of right now, I'm not sure that they have plans to do the second building and then the additional parking lot that's needed. So this is kind of just a review of the half that they have so far. This is what was approved, and then the elevations showing what is there now. So just so you can see the picture again, part of our code has that things need to have architectural relief. The facade needs to either come in or come out to provide, rather than just a blank wall or one plain wall. So while this building doesn't necessarily come in and out, I would hope that we can all agree that it does have a lot of architectural relief. They've kind of met it more with the different building materials that they've used, and then the awnings or roof parts above the windows. So do you guys agree that that meets the architectural relief? Would that be something that you'd be okay with moving forward on other types of buildings?
Personally, like you said, it's not just a flat, boring piece. So the little awnings or little pieces of relief in the roof line breaks that up. Personally, I like the fact that what was presented and what it was built was almost 100% exactly as presented. That personally is something that I like to see, that somebody doesn't deviate from what was presented and approved by the commission.
So, Ms. Jardot, I would agree. I think it was yesterday afternoon we did a drive-by and actually got up close to the building as well. One thing about this building, where it's located so far back from 58 Highway, I've driven by it a lot, but I don't think I ever paid a whole lot of attention to it, simply because it's buffered, it's so far back. But actually, driving up into the parking lot, checking out the building, I think architecturally it was done very well, even though it might not quite meet the letter of sorry, you used the word and I've forgotten now. I'd call it indented or varied depth of the face. But yeah, I agree with Chairman Wiggins. The roof details, I think, compensate for maybe the fact that that's a flat front. I think it's a nice looking building.
And to piggyback on that, this is a building that was built after some other existing buildings, so it maintains the architecture. I mean, the building that they had built previously to the east, it maintains that look and feel. So there's, I think, 4 buildings there total, 2 that run north and south, and now 2 that run east and west of different businesses, and they all kind of maintain a similar look and feel, which is nice, as opposed to having 4 differently, completely, separate architectural pieces.
I think that it would look a little funny without the flat front, so I think that was a good call. Also, what Commissioner Faulkner mentioned, that, it was kind of hidden, it was off the road, and I think that's a great thing for a daycare. It shows that the builder and the owner, thought about that, as well as, possibly the city with approving it. I think it's a great looking building.
The next one is Discover Vision Center, which was approved in July 2017. So here's the site plan and then an aerial overview of what the building looks like now. It's a little bit hard to see, but on the left are the elevations that were approved, and then here are 2 of the corners, the entrance and then kind of the back, and then here are 2 more. And then, so this building is one that uses a mix of materials. And then one other thing I wanted to point out was they have also used landscaping to screen their trash enclosure, which is not something that we require, but I wanted to point it out because I do think it looks really nice. And most places that require them that I've seen in other municipalities, it's typically shrubbery, but they went ahead and did some nice trees. So I just wanted to point that out and see if that was something that you guys noticed as well.
Go ahead, Mr. Faulkner.
Something that I don't think you mentioned here, Ms. Jardot, but initially, when this building was going up, and I think probably even back when site plan came through Planning and Zoning Commission, initially we had some concerns that the building was closer to the highway. And it's a different arrangement, and I don't necessarily feel like I need to go back through all of that again, but rather than locating the parking on the highway and then the building set back, this was, I think, probably intentional, trying something new. And like I say, initially, we had concerns that, bang, here's this building, the south face is closer to 58, but I guess we got used to it real quickly. It seems fine. Don't have that concern anymore. And I think it's a very nicely done, nice-looking building.
Yeah, just please, open session.
I happen to agree. You asked, do we like the mix of materials to achieve the forward decided design? Yes, I do like it. It looks good. I like the, this is a neat looking building. In other words, it's well kept. And I like the fact that it's a little bit different than some of the other designs that are around it. So I like it. I second Commissioner Faulkner.
Sorry.
Just go ahead whenever somebody
Okay.
finishes.
I was going to comment then, when they came to us with this plan, I remember they said they had kind of driven around the city and they had just finished the, I can't think the name of it, but it's got Mod Pizza and that whole development. And so they were trying to kind of keep it a similar sort of look, and I think that they did that really well. I think it's nice to see, something different, and I think it looks great. I like the aspect of it being close to the street like that. I think, it's nice not to just see a parking lot and you see the building instead. So I really think it's been a successful project.
I will say that it still has that funky entrance, though, where you got to drive around. Sorry, can you put funky in the notes there? I don't know. But the entrance is still kind of weird, but there's nothing we can do about that.
It's one less turn off of 58, though, which is a
Right.
good thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Just the one comment I have is I do like the landscaping, as long as it's properly maintained. Typically, at least from my experience, you'll see a new business come in town and they'll do the landscaping, maybe they're nice. And about 5 years later, when it's no longer as important, the trash location, they just start to deteriorate down there, and that distracts that takes away from that particular building. And when people drive through, trust me, they notice those kinds of things, and it's all part of the image that I think Raymore has, that when people drive through, whether they're resident or they're not a resident, this is a place I want to move to, because look, it's new, nice, modern, all these kind of things. It exudes those kind of things every time you drive down 58 Highway.
I think the modern-looking buildings are great. How they're trickling from west to east. You're seeing a lot of the modern-style homes now being built off of Pine Street behind Sonic, and I think that's a great look that complements some of these other buildings really well.
I'll just say ditto, since I was basically going to say all the same things. So.
Okay, next up we have American Self Storage, approved in August of 2017. So this is a little bit unique, I think, because part of their screening is that they've used the building as part of the screening between themselves and then the residential. So here's what it looks like if you're going down the road. And then this is I think I can do it with my, okay. It's right here, sorry, with the gate is at the end of Ramblewood Drive. And then here is their detention pond, and then also they've added some bushes and things like that. Again, it looks like there's fewer than there are because not all of them are in season right now. But it does fill in a bit more in the spring and then the summer. So my questions are, first of all, directed towards the monument sign. I'll go back to the front so you guys can see it. But do you feel like that's enough landscaping around the base of the monument sign? They are newly planted. They have maybe been there 8 months. So they should get a little bit bigger, but does that meet the intent of having the shrubbery around the bottom? And then also, do you guys feel like they did does the building as screening serve its purpose? And does that, do you feel like that looks okay in right next to residential?
So this was another drive-by, and I have some pluses and minuses based on, well, and good photographs in the packet, by the way, but you know, the drive-by kind of puts it a little more in context. Mm-hmm. So when this building was under construction, I had a lot of concerns about the appearance from 58 Highway. Under construction, it just looked big, monolithic, in spite of the fact that it's broken up, but it was not a nice-looking building during construction. Since it's built, since it's painted, with the contrast, with the landscaping, I don't have those concerns. So breathe a big sigh of relief that it turned out a lot better than I was afraid when it was under construction. And frankly, the monument sign wasn't a concern to me at all. Thing about landscaping around a monument sign, a lot of miniature shrubs tend to get awfully big, and then you've obscured the sign, defeated its purpose. So I had no concerns about the monument sign. So from 58 Highway, I would call this building very much of a success. I observed but did not drive down, is that Falcon Street? I forget, on the east. It's probably on a map, but the dead end, you know, sorry, I can't really see it here. The long dead end street on the east, I did not specifically drive down, but I could observe that, you know, the storage facility has a fence there for screening, not the most attractive, and came in from the west on Ramblewood, and there's several houses there, and I forget what the connector street, I can almost read it here, but there's a narrower connector street that runs south from the gate and then turns back to the west. And I would think, you know, to me it's one thing if the storage facility is there and someone buys a house and knows what they're getting into. That's one thing. I don't feel too bad about that. If someone had a house there in, I think, is that Ramblewood subdivision, and the storage facility came in next to them, yeah, I would not be a happy camper, because from Ramblewood, this storage facility is just, it's such a contrast. It's kind of like, that one has me scratching my head, you know, since the storage facility is shoehorned right in between residential. So, you know, pros and cons. I haven't heard anything specifically from anybody that lives in Ramblewood, so, you know, I'm not there. I don't know. It would matter what they have to say. Yeah.
Yeah, please, open.
Okay. Chairman Faulkner took some of the words out of my mouth. I'm on record as being maybe the only commissioner that voted against this project. So it looks better than I imagined, but I was always worried about this turning into more of the industrial wing of the city, when that really wasn't point of it turning into the industrial wing of the city. Kind of some industrial creep that happened because you have residences right there, and like he said, if I owned a house right there and storage was built when you had one or two others down the street near Casey's, I would have been pretty upset about it. But as much beautification and landscape as you can do for this building, for the people who have homes near that area, I think is good. So you asked a question about the landscaping, and I think the more the better, because of the fact that this is right across the street from people's homes who they spent $200,000 and $300,000 to buy. But it looks fairly neat, at this point. And so, but something else, as much as you can to hide it, is good. And again, I come from that, being the one person that wasn't in favor of this. So, all right.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I've got a comment. I kind of disagree. I drive by this and I think, oh God, why did we do that? Because I think it looks kind of out of scale, the front of it. I like the idea that we put the storage there because I think it was a good use of that space. But I think that front building is just so in your face as you drive down the street. I wish it were set back further. I think, honestly, I don't even notice the monument sign because their text is so big on the building. And while I think we need the services there, I wish that we had had them push it back further. And I remember asking them about the facade on the front, if they were going to make it look a little less industrial, and they said that they were, but I think it looks very industrial. So it's just the one project, every time I drive past it, it's like, I kind of wish I had voted against it. But I mean, I still think the purpose is good, and the services are good. I just wish we had pushed it back, or at least taken the very front building, maybe not had it. That's just my opinion.
Having not been on the commission yet when this came across, Commissioner Bowie, I probably would have been in the same boat as you. It's especially in agreement with Commissioner Pfizer, those, the monument sign is kind of insignificant because they've got 600 square feet of giant red letters on the front of the building. So the little 4-foot sign out front is kind of lost. It's like a little political sign compared to a billboard. It is nice though that at least looking at Google Maps on my phone, from Ramblewood North, it looks like most of that tree line was preserved. So the houses that were in existence or already under construction on the north side of the neighborhood were not subject to having a bunch of trees torn down and then having a bunch of little saplings planted. At the same time, on the south side, I don't believe at the time there were any homes there, and they have planted some trees. Obviously, it's going to take another better part of a decade for them to actually grow up and provide any real screening. So hopefully that, that'll fill in with time, but definitely in agreement that the ginormous buildings at the front, so close to 58, whether it was take one of those out or move them to the back, do something. It almost similar to your just point of the Discover Vision Center being so front to the road, where that was a good application. This might not have hit the mark.
Our next building is the former Pizza Hut. So it's been remodeled and is now Schlotsky's. This was actually an administrative approval of a site plan. The Development Services Director has authority to approve 10% or less of changes. So in this case, it was largely paint that has been replaced, and then the awnings were replaced as well. So I guess, what are your thoughts on how this building has been approved, and then also the amount of change between the two as a positive, I think?
I've got to commend the architect and designer because, I mean, you drive around town and you see a Pizza Hut and or a Taco Bell or whatever, and it's always a Pizza Hut or a Taco Bell. You drive down in one of our neighboring cities, there's a building that has been a Pizza Hut from the 70s or 80s, and no matter what's in there, if I had driven into town and seen this, I would have never guessed this was a Pizza Hut in its prior life. So I love the metal awnings, the black and the white contrast. It's very, kind of Florida beachy kind of look. It looks nice, looks clean, looks modern, and it goes well with some of the pieces like Discover Vision Center and some of the other modern pieces. So for a piece that I was worried would sit there vacant forever, I was very pleased with how this turned out.
So can I jump in? Thank you. So to answer your question that you have on page 24, should the city require site plan review? I would say yes to that question. That would be my answer. It's not a terrible amount of extra time or anything. It's just another piece of thing we had to look for, but I would say yes. But to piggyback on what our chair said, I like what they did. Looks good. Have no issues or complaints. I think they did a good job of making it look nice and modern, et cetera. So I think it looks good.
Yeah. So I like it. I watched it as it was underway, and it was kind of like, oh wow. And I think in the beginning I didn't realize it was a Schlotzsky's, but I think it was a very, very well done transition. I would praise city staff. I didn't feel like we missed out on anything not having a case here at P&Z. I think as far as I'm concerned, this was appropriate for staff review. One other thing that I think you had actually noted, on page 24, Ms. Jardot, which is not always the case, but the drive-through does have an escape, which I think is excellent. We've had concerns, I remember with the Raymore Taco Bell in front of Price Chopper. I remember quite a discussion about the fact that it does not have an escape lane. And I don't know that that's really caused us any serious trouble yet, but I like that you noted that Schlotzsky's did keep the escape lane, and I do think that's a good idea with the drive-throughs. So as far as I'm concerned, high marks. That always seemed like a very difficult corner to get business in and out of, and probably because of COVID, I haven't actually been to this Schlotzsky's yet, but I was certainly in and out of there when it was Pizza Hut, and it's kind of a case where you maybe are not going to just spontaneously stop in, but if you're looking for a Schlotzsky's, you'll get in and out of there.
I agree a lot with what Commissioner Bowie had to say, that I do agree that this probably should have gone through the commission and through the city council, as I think there were a lot more than 10% changes to it. I don't think that it would have had any problem passing both parties, but I do think that it should have required some oversight, if you would.
And if I could just ask, sorry to put you on the spot, would you agree that maybe the 10%, we had different interpretations of what 10% was done? Would that be okay to say? Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So the issue is not necessarily that 10%, that staff still should maybe have approval up to 10%, but that our interpretation of 10% was maybe different than expectations here.
Absolutely.
Do you have a rough, is it the changing of the awning and removing a door or something that was the change of the 10%? Because the physical building, they didn't demolish it, so the site didn't really change. They added a patio. That's not really that big of a deal. Or maybe that is. I don't know. So I guess it's a question of what we consider. What is that 10%? Because 10% is not a big deal, but it depends on what we're talking about. Are we talking about the 10% that's, okay, well, it was paint, or that doesn't really count, so it's changing of an awning, like what is the 10%?
I think it's okay in this instance because we all like it.
Right.
If we didn't like it, then we'd all have a complaint about it, right?
Yes, sir.
So,
And it, like, for me, I didn't even give it a second thought because the building existed, the parking lot existed, the entrance space. I mean, if it was a tear down and a rebuild, it'd be one thing, but it was, for the most part, it was kind of a remodel. And so the site plan had already been approved. They just, changed the way that the awnings look and changed the paint. Whether it stayed Pizza Hut or not, they could have changed it and changed the paint color, and that wouldn't have come back to us.
And excuse me.
go ahead.
Picking up on Chairman Wiggins' comment, I think all of that is very significant. I agree with Chairman Wiggins. Footprint, parking, access. There wasn't a huge amount to me that actually changed. Although I will say 100% of the paint color changed. But yeah, we're not going to count that. But I would say, in contrast, if this had been going from Pizza Hut restaurant to a totally different use, and one thing, if I'm quoting, sorry for stealing something from Planning Pipeline, but a fast food restaurant that's going to become a marijuana dispensary, that might hit me a little differently because, it's not a restaurant going to a restaurant. So I think usage of the building kind of weighs in on me as far as whether it should or should not require a new site plan review.
Do you know, are there other 10% comparables out there? As I'm new to the board, I'd like to know if there's been other situations where they've utilized that 10%. What does that entail, and how does that compare to what we see here?
Well, sir, I'm going to throw in that I am semi-new as well, and this was maybe my first one.
Okay.
But I just wanted to gauge they did change some of the roof line and things like that. I definitely see both sides, and so staff, we just wanted to know where that line is, understanding also that there is somewhat of some flexibility. We want to remain open to developers and going before Planning Commission. While we might find it not a hindrance, have heard that it can be in any community, not specific to Raymore. And also, just trying to define that line a little bit better for us. I personally can be a little bit more black and white, and so having a defined line is helpful to me.
I think for me, like Commissioner Faulkner mentioned, it stayed essentially a quick eat restaurant. If it had changed into a bar or it had become a clothing store or something, the use didn't change, the zoning didn't change. I mean, basically just one restaurant left and another restaurant came in. So I'm more acceptable of a lenient 10% than if it were to be, all of a sudden this was going to become, a sports bar. Might be a little different. Or if it was going to be split in half and it was going to be a clothing store and a jewelry store, and completely change the use of the establishment, or if the change was happening during, something that had been approved, like during construction or something.
So the other thing to think about is what is the current use of the building? There's some franchises that have real distinct characters in their buildings and so forth. Like if this was an IHOP from 1975, right? It's going to always be an IHOP in our mind, right? So I think that's something to consider also in terms of percentage or whatnot. So just throwing that out there as well.
No, I really appreciate it. Thank you.
I have a question for Katie. Katie, do you know if So the school district has recently announced that they plan to buy the old Orscheln building and transform it into a vocational type facility. Do you know if and when they present those plans, if it doesn't require more than a 10% change on the facade, if that would be something that would come to planning and zoning? Or is that something that the director has the authority to approve? Do you know?
If it's not more than 10% of a change, the code gives the director the authority to determine if that.
Does that include
comes before.
interior as well? Or just the exterior?
I'd have to check the code. I'm not sure if
Yeah,
it's
I don't know.
specified
I
interior or
haven't checked the
exterior.
code either.
But, because,
I don't
I
know.
mean, we don't really have anything to do with the interior of a facility, but that brings up a great point, because like that whole western, almost half is open air.
Right.
You know, so what it used to be Sunfresh, correct? And they knocked out the walls to be able to have the outdoor equipment stuff there. So by enclosing that, you know, back in, and maybe they're going to leave it open. Maybe it's going to be, you know, vocational training stuff out there. I don't know.
I would assume if they do, it would exceed the 10% transformation, and
Yeah.
it would come back before us for.
Well, in addition, I would wonder would zoning change at all for that piece, because it's going, I mean, is that still, if it's going to become part of the school district, does the zoning use
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know.
change
That's
from
a good point.
whatever it is, C2 to some
Right.
other?
No, that's a good point.
Yeah, I guess we'll find out. Thank you. I think we've talked about this one quite a bit.
The next one is Compass Health. So it is just finishing up right now. I think they've already had some walkthroughs, and this was approved in December of 2019. So this is what it was approved to, the elevations to look like, and then what it looks like now, kind of up a little bit on the hill. And then the back sides. This is part of their landscape buffer. Again, they have a little bit to go on the maturity level. I know this was a big project for Raymore, so I wanted to talk about what parts of the design were really successful, and then if you did see areas that needed improvement, so that we could note those for in the future.
I've got a quick question to start this one off. If you could go back to the original photo. Approved December 17th, and I don't believe you were here yet, but most of the commission was, about half of us was on this one. I know that they had changed their design partway through, you know, and they came back and we reviewed and approved, but you know, obviously I liked the previous design first, and I believe there were a number of issues. Either they had over-designed it for what their actual need was, plus maybe that pond. The pond is probably and that's not anything to do with the structure itself, but the fact that a contractor supposedly punched a hole in the pond or whatever, and they decided not to fix it or make them fix it. That probably disappointed me the most. I realize it has nothing to do with the building itself, but you know, if it was my project and somebody tore out the dam or the levee to my pond, I would make them build that dam back, the dam back. So that disappointing, because that seemed like a great feature to put a walking trail around this water feature and stuff. And now I haven't seen it, but I assume it's just basically now just empty weeds and grass back there instead of. So that was the most disappointing thing. I think it turned out like what their second approach on it was. Obviously, like you said, landscaping has some maturity to go. They ripped out a ton of trees, but you kind of have to do that sometimes. But those are my opinions.
Well, really hard to say about this building, because I drove by it like one time. You know, you don't see it from the street. I always worry about buildings like this, because buildings that are one-offs, that don't face the street, what's going to happen in 15 years when this company says we're no longer needing the space anymore. So I always worry about these buildings. I really don't have many comments about it. It looks fine. I don't think it's way off from what we thought it would be. Terribly, you know, there's a few little small details, but you know, I don't have any problems with this building.
I'm going to be honest, I expected a little a little more discussion on this one, but that's okay.
Me too.
That was our last one, so if you could give me a minute, I will give you your screens back. Okay. Okay, that concludes my discussion and presentation on the past and previous projects.
All right. Well, if does anybody have any further questions or statements for Ms. Jardot? If not, we will move right along into the city council report. I don't know. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Cataract, you were waving at me. Do you have something to add, or are you presenting the city council report, or?
I am presenting the council report.
Well, fantastic.
Yes.
Please, run away with it.
I am not trying to fill Mr. Zer's shoes, but I am just stepping in to take one agenda item, so you at least hear my voice tonight. I've just been hiding in the back room, but I have been listening to all your comments.
Your sentences, if you're going to fill his shoes, your sentences got to be a lot longer. With
Yeah, remember,
much
he
more harder
bills by
words.
the hour, so you got to stretch out those.
There were 2 meetings of council since the commission last met. February 22nd agenda is a very short agenda. There actually were not any development-related items on that agenda, so we'll skip to the March 8th meeting of council. There was one item, new business. The Planning Commission had given a favorable recommendation for Alexander Creek Phase 4 preliminary plat. And so on March 8th, council did accept that recommendation and unanimously approved that preliminary plat. They have started a little bit of site work, and of course, with preliminary plat, they still have to come back to the commission and council for a final plat, and I know they are working on that, so they're anxious to get started on that development. Those were the only items development related from city council.
All right, thank you very much. And I will go into the staff report. It looks like Ms. Jardot is lined up for that one.
Thank you, Commissioner. Just a few things. The single-family homes are keeping in stride with last year, so that's a good thing. And then Scooter's Coffee is actually starting to train employees, so they should be opening up in the next week or two. Another note, I appreciate everyone looking at their email because we had to cancel last minute the Universal Design House, so I apologize. We will reschedule it, but just, wanted to stay in the basement instead. In terms of the upcoming schedule, it's noted on here that we don't have any applications for April 6th. We have since gotten 2, so we will be meeting. We have Parkside has a first phase final plat, and then Southtown Storage, which is actually right by Brightside, has a site plan to put forth. And then on April 12th for City Council is when Parkside's final plat will go before City Council. Also, we've had a plan submitted for part of the Carroll property. The plan is up on the What's Happening app, but feel free to email me if you have any questions, and I'm happy to send it as well. Mm-hmm. And then the venue at the Good Ranch is continuing to be reviewed for their construction plans and things like that. They still need a final plat, but they are moving forward as well. So hopefully we will see that soon.
Thank you. Is there any other, I guess, obviously we see dirt moving, so is there any other updates on any other projects that are going on? Obviously they just started erecting some steel over here at Heartland Dental. Looks like CACU is getting close. And also looks like we've got a couple of things maybe in the pipeline. Just didn't know if there was anything else or any updates on any other things. I guess that's probably about it. There maybe the townhouse over here or Hy-Vee still kind of waiting on pandemics probably to settle down.
Yes, and the townhouses, are you talking about the Sunset Plaza ones? Yes, so those should be coming forward soon. They have to wait until April, but after that, I would imagine they would be moving forward fairly quickly.
Excellent, thank you. All right, moving to public comment, but not seeing any public. On the off chance anybody's out in the wings, I'll give you a second. Seeing none, I'll move into the commissioner member comments, and I'll start all the way on my far right with Commissioner Bowie. Sir.
Appreciate all the information tonight. No real questions or comments. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Secretary Peterman.
I don't have anything tonight.
Very good. Commissioner Manser.
I'd like to thank Mr. Icky for equipping us with the knowledge to have the discussion about the use tax with other people. I've got his presentation before, and I've got the opportunity to speak with several people in the community and advocate for the use tax approval. I'd like to thank Ms. Jardot for, you talked a lot today. So thank you. You did a great job, and thank you to all the staff.
Commissioner Faulkner.
Well, I'd like to thank city staff, Ms. Jordan. Thank you for doing the minutes, and it's been a long time since we've actually had a secretary in community development, so I imagine that takes a little load off of a few other people, and I see from the pipeline, you know, it looks like things are picking back up. One other thing I would note this evening, I think I spotted just a one line in the Kansas City Star obituaries for Judy Goff, who died on, I believe it was March 7th, and more detail on Cullen Funeral Home's website. They did arrangements for her, but just some history for those who don't go back as long as I do. Judy Goff was chair of the Planning and Zoning Commission when she got herself elected to city council, and the vice chair moved up, and that was something like 16 years ago, I think, or close to that. But the obituary on Cullen Funeral Home did note that she was both Raymore City Council and Planning and Zoning Commission and serving the public, and so her passing was something I thought Planning and Zoning Commission should note, since she was a member and chair some time ago.
Thank you. Vice Chair Fizer.
Yeah, a few weeks ago there was a community conversation in Raymore, and my husband and I took part in it. I was upstairs and he was downstairs, and we still got put in the same room. I tried to pretend like I didn't know him for a long time, but he spilled the beans. But I really appreciate that we do that sort of thing in Raymore. I think I enjoyed meeting other people, even though I knew one of them pretty well. But I think it's just, I mean, I don't know if a lot of cities do that sort of thing, and I think it's really good to revisit now and then and kind of get opinions on what people think they like and what they don't, because I don't always know, and it's kind of nice for me to hear what other people say, not social media comments, because I ignore those as much as possible, but just to hear people really speak intelligently about what they like and what they don't. And so I just want to say I really appreciate having that opportunity.
Commissioner Ingert.
Thank you, staff. I appreciated your presentation tonight on the April 6th ballot, and I'll be more than happy to contact everyone that I know and provide support so that it'll pass. I definitely see the importance behind that, so I appreciate that. And for the rest of the city staff too, putting the packet together. For someone who's relatively new, this is very easy to understand and comprehend, so I sincerely appreciate that.
Mayor Turnbow.
I don't have anything. It's not already been said. Thank you.
Oh, I was making sure to leave you to the end because you have lots of wisdom at times. All the time. I mean, sir, all the time. In addition, yes, thank you, city staff, as always. Yeah, put my foot in my mouth on that one. Thank you for everything. I like these exercises to go through and talk about some of the old projects. You know, sometimes they kind of get forgotten about, so it's nice to bring them up. And with that, I have nothing else and would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion by Commissioner Manser, second by Secretary Peterman to adjourn. All those in favor? Seeing nobody else, we will be adjourned, 8-0.
Yeah.